right, hello everybody. This is a video about the stamp game, sort of an introduction to stamp game. What I'm showing you here is not from the stamp game. This is from the golden beads or the bank game. Sometimes in the preschool, particularly in kindergarten, it's called bank game or exchange game. But in the 6 to 9, into first grade and beyond, sometimes it's called the golden beads, so there's different terms. This is a very much more concrete material, so this usually almost always comes first for a child. Now, if they really get used to this material, which I will make videos about too, they move on to the stamp game. This is kind of an extra, according to most schools, but we make felt mats, very simple, just for the 4 colors for the 4 place values. And so green for the units, blue for the tens, red for the hundreds, and green again for the thousands place. And they're great because you can just roll them up. They don't take much storage space. They're extremely light for children. Some of the old Montessori materials were wooden and heavy, like the old checkerboard and stuff were heavy and hard to move around. We still have those. Sometimes we teach with them or make it an option, but these kind of felt mats are great. And so a typical way of doing this would be to write problems for children, write it on paper. We often write those problems with colored pen so that the numbers on the paper match the color of the place value. Now, another level of abstraction would be to only use black pen, where they don't have that sort of support of having the color for each place value. And then when I present the stamp game, for the first time, I usually talk about the material a little bit. So this is a sort of a realistic box. You know, it's a little messy, things aren't perfect. I noticed over the years that often you're short on thousands, so you kind of have to refill those. They get mixed with the ones, you know, with lots of little hands using them. If you run out of thousands, you know, a realistic thing children do is they sometimes just flip a 1 to use it. But generally, these should be laid out in the correct order that matches your mat or the correct place value. So the green units, the blue tens, the red hundreds, and the green thousands. And so many schools don't have the mat. And that's okay, it still works. You can still do it. A great thing about stamp game is that it can be used for addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And we use it for all 4 of the main operations too. So when you're introducing the actual stamp game to children, sometimes that's in kindergarten, but usually in first grade. If you're introducing it, you want to take your time and really talk about it and explain it. So, you know, when I sit down, I don't always have time to go through things. I like to kind of organize it a little bit, talk about it a little bit with the children, and I kind of point out everything. Another thing you can do is you can compare things. So like you can say, oh, remember the thousands cube when you were doing golden beads? Well, we have 1,000 tile, and so it works the same way. We're just not going to use this big cube. We're going to instead use a tile with the number 1,000 on it. It's a more abstract. So I kind of talk about it a little bit like that, and just kind of get them used to things. Now for addition, which is what I wanted to talk about in this video mostly, I don't get into the other pieces of a stamp game. I don't want it to be too overwhelming. Again, this is usually with somebody who's 6, maybe 7 years old. So I don't want to muddle up. I might say something if they seem curious, like, oh, we'll use these another time. But I want to be focused on the tiles themselves. So I write the problem, and then like when you're teaching most math, you kind of want to talk through how to read the numbers. So suppose you have 2,000, move my box a little bit more, 2,000, and I do a lot of self-talk. I've actually been experimenting with the idea with older children of doing no talk, silent lessons. I don't do that very often, but sometimes. And when you're doing this the first time, you want to do static addition. Let me move this around a little bit. Doesn't fit perfectly in the frame, but so you don't want any exchanging. That's what static means. So I might lay out some numbers and kind of practice reading them. So what is this? 2,323. Might have the child repeat it. A lot of times if they're doing the stamp game, they've already practiced reading numbers a lot. They've already used the numeral cards to lay out the numbers on the side to make the problem. So I just kind of practice that a little bit, or I might kind of feel it out a little bit. I might say like, what is this number? And see if they can say 323. Usually they can, or with a little practice they can. And then I kind of, even if I have it memorized, which I look at the paper and I make a point of pointing at the place values onto the side. I might have the paper up here and I might point to the place values and say, okay, now our bottom number, let's keep that separate, is, whatever it is, like, I'm keeping these a little closer so they fit on the same screen. Maybe it's 3,000 in the thousands place. And you want to do small numbers. Again, no exchanging. Keep it simple so the math itself is easy for them. You want them to build confidence at first, and then you can get into bigger numbers and exchanging and stuff. But you don't want them to feel demoralized on the first day of doing it. So you might set out something like this. And what does this say? Oh, 2,323 plus, or in addition to 3,211. Okay, very similar numbers. Now, whenever we do adding or addition, we want to start at the unit side. You can kind of point to that and really sort of accentuate that, slow down. Which side do we start on? Kind of do, it's almost like self-talk to see what children say back. They'll usually point to the unit side. Now, I'm presenting this from my point of view. Of course, you would want to, if you're teaching this to a child, it should be facing them. And then you start in the units, and maybe you start with the first thing, and a little self-talk is good, even though your brain as an adult doesn't need a lot of that maybe, but 3 plus 1, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Try to model being careful with all that and how you lay it out. Okay, I'm going to write down 4 in my units place. What do you think this one is? And they are usually eager and want to say, and it seems easy to them, oh, it's 3. Right, well, it's 30, it's 3 in the tens place, so let's write a 3 in the tens place. Notice how that has blue ink in that number. And let's keep going. Okay, 5. And have them record each of the sort of sub-answers. It's really not sub-answers, but it feels like it to them. And generally, I kind of do a lesson like this where I do 3 or 4 problems. So I tell a child up front, I say, I'm going to show you how to do one. We're going to do one together, and then I want you to try one. Now, if they fly through that and they seem really confident, I might say, why don't you try 2 on your own? And I always say, like, come and get me if you need help or you feel stuck. And usually they get excited about it and do fine and maybe ask for something little. And then I try to check their work right away so they get instant feedback. I try not to wait until later in the day when I'm checking their notebook. So, I mean, this is a very basic, quick run through of static addition with the stamp game. Plan on making a number of more videos that go through all of the operations, but also all the iterations within those operations. It actually gets fairly complicated. There's a lot of nuance to how you can present materials, making it individualized for different children based on their needs. So thanks for watching. This has been Stamp Game Static Addition.